Hey guys, today I'll be taking a look at those two ultra important Senate races in the state of Georgia, taking a look at the new updated numbers for everything and just updating you guys on what's happening, because right now Democrats are, winning in terms of the early vote. There's no doubt about that. It's really just about how many Republicans can turn out for the Republican candidates and how many of them turn out. If a lot of, black voters turn out compared to white voters typically, then I think that Democrats have this race in the bag. It's really just about how many people turn out and, what kinds of demographics they are from, because really the white vote is split pretty evenly, but in favor of the Republicans, but the black vote is pretty much 9 in 10 vote for the Democratic Party. So before we go any further, make sure you join my Discord server if you have not, the link to which is at the very top of the description below. So make sure you join that if you haven't. So taking a look at the numbers between Ossoff and Perdue and Warnock and Loeffler, you have Jon Ossoff, who leads by 0.9%, and Raphael Warnock, who is up by a margin of 1.8%. So Ossoff at 48.5%, Warnock at 49.2%. Now the polls, they were not the best for the 2020 election. Pollsters just got a lot of those demographics wrong. They have to predict the turnout for those demographics, and they were just completely off in 2020, even worse than they were in 2016. And taking a look at the numbers between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, on November 3rd, you see that Joe Biden was leading by 1.2%. He was at 48.5% to Donald Trump's 47.4%. So Joe Biden at 48.5%, he ended up winning 49.5%. Donald Trump 49.26%. So Trump did do a little bit better with those undecided voters that were not part of the 48.5 and 47.4%, but Joe Biden still ended up winning the state. Now, he did not win 50%, he won less votes than David Perdue, but the race was just really, really close, and I think that Democrats definitely have a very good chance of flipping those two seats, as right now, Ossoff is up by 0.9% and Warnock by 1.8%. So I'm not saying, trust the polls. These polls, there's barely been that many, and I'm not saying that these polls mean that Ossoff and Warnock are just going to win. I'm just saying that, these numbers, they're not looking that bad compared to the numbers that Joe Biden was seeing, and, the polls were off by less than 1% in the state of Georgia, and polling average of 1.2%, ending up going to 0.25% really is not that bad. And with Raphael Warnock at 49.2%, that is pretty positive, because he only has to win 0.8% of that undecided vote if these polls are really that accurate. And I think that these polls, they are much more accurate than the polls that we saw in other states, and the main reason for this is that we have the demographics. They know who voted, the percentage of voters that voted, they know who voted, and so I think that they're going to get, where the voters are going to come from a lot better in this race, because, that they, those people just voted a little bit over a month ago, 2 months ago, so they know who already voted, so I think that is going to increase the accountability of these polls, but we'll see. Really right now, it's all about the early voting numbers. As you can see, Perdue won by 1.8%. He won by less than 100,000 votes. Joe Biden, on the other hand, won by around 12,000 votes. So Biden at 2.473 million, while David Perdue won at 2.462. So Joe Biden actually won more votes than David Perdue, but Perdue had a larger percentage of the vote share at 49.7 to Joe Biden's 49.5. So I don't also want to take a look at the approval rating of Donald Trump in the state of Georgia, because something that these two senators are doing, especially Kelly Loeffler, is she is she's portraying herself as very, very pro-Trump. She said she was pro-Trump when she was appointed by Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia. So she has really been running her campaign, trying to get as close to Trump as she could, closer than David Perdue. They both do support Trump on, very, very many issues, but Trump is not popular in the state of Georgia, and you saw this. Joe Biden won the state of Georgia, so Trump lost this state, and I'm just really not sure as whether or not trying to get yourself as close to Trump as possible is really going to be the best strategy. I think that Kelly Loeffler is not going to win her race. I really just don't. Between Ossoff and Perdue, I think that's a lot more of a pure toss-up, but right now I don't think Kelly Loeffler is going to win. It's not my prediction. I'll make a prediction towards the end, but right now I don't think that Kelly Loeffler stands that good of a chance at this point in time. But with the approval rating for Donald Trump, his approval rating is not good. I mean, typically after an incumbent loses an election, you saw this with George H.W. Bush, you saw this with Bill Clinton leaving office, even George W. Bush, when he left office, his approval rating went up, especially Barack Obama as well. With almost every single president, when they leave office, their approval rating goes up, but not for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has yet to concede the election, and you see his numbers are actually going down. This is the 4-year graph. This is all 4 years, and you see that Trump's approval right now, his net approval, is at one of the worst in his entire presidency, at -14. The only time he was at a lower point was, I mean, very, very early on in 2017, he was at -16. It did increase by quite a bit, but right now, he is at a pretty particularly low point, and Donald Trump is not approved of in this country. If you take a look at this chart right here, or this, I don't know, this map, I guess, for the entire United States, showing the approval rating of Donald Trump in each and every state, you see that Donald Trump is not popular in Georgia. His net approval in this state is -7%. Compare that to a state like South Carolina, +3 in favor of the president, or Alabama, +20. Now, he is more popular here than he is in a state like Florida, or a state like North Carolina, but, you know, it's very, very close, and polls are always off by a little bit. So, Trump is not popular in Georgia, so, you know, trying to get yourself as close to him as possible, I'm really not too sure, you know, if that's really the best idea, if you're trying to get yourself closer and closer to an unpopular president that is leaving office very, very soon. So the betting odds between Kelly Loeffler and Raphael Warnock, Warnock has continued to increase his chances. He is now at 57 cents per share. He is almost reaching the numbers that Kelly Loeffler had. I mean, Kelly Loeffler was at 57 cents a share at one point in time, and I think that these are very, very positive numbers for the Reverend. I think that 57.45, I mean, these are numbers that I never expected. I never expected Raphael Warnock to be leading the betting odds against Kelly Loeffler, because, you know, the polls, I think the polls, in the end, they would favor the Democrats, as they typically always do. But the betting odds, they're not, you know, any sort of good method to predict elections, but betting odds, they are, you know, how other people feel about these races. And right now, a pretty significant majority of people feel that Raphael Warnock is going to defeat Kelly Loeffler, which is something I did not expect. So the numbers right now, Kelly Loeffler is at 45, Raphael Warnock 57. Really, if you're a Republican in a state of Georgia and people expect you to lose, that really is not the greatest sign for you. And then for Jon Ossoff and David Perdue, Ossoff has increased by a lot. David Perdue so far has gone up, and, you know, with this, it goes up and down throughout the day, so the numbers that I'm saying right now might not actually be the actual numbers when you're watching this, so it goes up a little bit, you know, like it did yesterday. But the trend here is that Jon Ossoff is increasing in his chances of victory, while David Perdue is slipping with only 3 days to go. And David Perdue, he is, yes, still in quarantine, so he will not be able to campaign, which I think is probably going to damage him, because he needs enthusiasm. These two Republican candidates, they are boring. I mean, you know, I don't see how you could see these two candidates as exciting, you know, figures. They are really, really boring, and I think that Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock have the excitement behind them. They have the enthusiasm, and they're really not doing that bad. I mean, Georgia just flipped blue on the presidential level, and I think that those voters know how important this is, and I think they are going to turn out for Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. And you saw David Perdue, the incumbent senator from a Republican state. Georgia is still, I mean, it's been a Republican state for decades, and the state of Georgia, for their Republican incumbent, he could not even get 50% of the vote in that state. I think that shows that many people are opposed to David Perdue. He did do better than Trump, but really he did not do that well for a Republican. I definitely expected him to do a little bit better. I expected him to actually win this race outright, because I think that he probably would have done a little bit better than Donald Trump, but really he did not. He won less votes than Joe Biden, so these two candidates, they are not very popular, but really, I think that the only thing going for them is that they're not Democrats, and a lot of conservatives in the state, they may not like them, but they do not want to vote for a Democrat. So that's really the only thing right now that's going for these two Republican senators. And you have the net change in seats by party, the betting odds. So basically everything that is not Democrats plus 1, 2, or 3 is absolutely impossible, because, well, there's only 2 seats left, and Democrats have already gained 1 seat. They won Arizona and Colorado, which were flipped, but they lost Alabama. So right now it's net change of +1 for the Democratic Party no matter what, and there's a 39% chance of that occurring according to the betting odds, which is basically Democrats lose both seats in Georgia. +2 is Democrats win 1 seat and lose 1 seat in the state of Georgia, but Democrats winning both seats right now is the highest chance of occurring at 41 cents per share, overtaking Democrats +1 from yesterday. So right now, according to these numbers, there is a higher chance of Democrats winning both seats than there is of them winning 0 seats, but really it's all very close, and this is betting odds. So right now, most people, they are swaying in favor of the Democratic Party. That's the trend that we've been seeing. Many people are confident in David Perdue, in Jon Ossoff, and Raphael Warnock, and really, I don't see Democrats +2 as something that's going to occur. I don't think that there is, the electoral, the vote share is going to split. It's going to be that different for both candidates. I don't see one Democrat winning from Georgia and one Republican winning from Georgia. That can definitely occur, but I don't think that situation is very likely and one that we're going to see ourselves in, because just so many voters. I really don't think that the amount of voters who are going to vote for David Perdue but not Kelly Loeffler is going to be so large that it actually makes Loeffler lose but Perdue win. So I think that either Republicans win both or Democrats win both at this moment in time. And the early voting right now, it's going down a little bit, but that's just with some adjustments. So it's at 3.002 million. I think that's going to be the finalized number. I changed by a couple of votes, but really that's the final number. And then for the regular election, 4.013. Now, to put this into context, for a runoff race, this is extremely high turnout. I mean, runoff turnout, this is at 3 million, so this number right there should be 3 million. This is a little bit older. This is from a couple days ago, and so all this is a little bit lower. But basically, these numbers down here, they are the final numbers before early voting. You see 2.1 million for the 2008 Senate seat, but really this was a race where Democrats already won 58 or I believe almost 60 seats in the Senate. That's a super majority, and this was with the election of Barack Obama, of course. So Democrats didn't see this as too important, so they didn't come out for the Democrat there in the 2008 Senate race and these other races. You see pretty low turnout for these runoffs. We're already at 3 million. That is going to break the record for a turnout for a runoff race. And we are already at, I believe, around 60% of the turnout. You have 3 million votes and 4.9, almost 5 million people voted in the general election for the 2020 Senate races here. So you're at around 60% turnout of the November election. In 2008, of course, there was less votes there, 3.9 million, so that's at 57. So it already eclipsed that. So the turnout for this race really is very, very high. And what I think is the most beneficial for the Democratic Party is if you were to take a look at the race and ethnicity, you see that there are some trends that favor the Democrats. So what you see down here is, if you were to take a look at the distribution, white 55.8, this is the election that's going to occur. These are the early votes for the runoff, and these are the numbers for the regular election. 56.5 for the white vote drops down to 55.8. Now this isn't an estimation. These are the actual numbers. These are the actual early voting numbers for race and ethnicity. The black vote, 30.8% right now. It was 27.7%. That is the thing right there. That I think is going to benefit the Democratic Party the most. 1.1 million votes. You had 923,000, which is pretty close. The turnout rate is at 39.8%, 27.7%. I mean, that is, so much higher. I mean, 39.8% turnout rate compared to 27.7, 56.5 for the white vote, 41.1%. Or no, actually, no. Okay, that doesn't turn out. Okay, ignore everything I just said. Okay, I don't know. I guess I can't read, but you see the white vote, 56.5. It has gone down. The Hispanic vote has also gone down a little bit from 2.6%. Asian American vote, went down a little bit as well. So really not too many changes. I mean, these account for very small percentages of the electorate. They can make a difference, but they probably vote. It's really just a black vote, and that is what Democrats are betting on, and that is what they're getting. They are getting high black turnout, which is what they need. Those who did not vote in the 2020 general election, 115,000, they could sway this election. That I think is very beneficial for the Democrats. They want higher turnout, and those voters, they are, many of them, as I've been saying for a long time, voters who just turned 18 after November 3rd and registered before the deadline, and they have voted, and they are going to vote overwhelmingly for the Democratic Party. So, as like these numbers favor the Democrats, and around 900,000 people turned out on election day for these Georgia races for the Senate because the total was 4.9 million, and 4.013 million voted early in the general election. Now, for these runoffs, it's currently at 3 million. I expect around 3.5 to 6 to 3.7. It might even be 3.3 million, which would make my prediction correct. But it's a runoff race, and the in-person voting, I don't think is going to be anywhere as high as it was for the general election, because it still is a runoff. And I think that less people are going to, go on that specific day. A lot of them are probably just going to vote a little bit earlier. So if the turnout really isn't that high, I don't see Republicans, maintaining their seats here. And turnout has been amazing for these races. You see the exit polls, you see 28% black right now. It is at the black vote. It is currently at 30.8%. So that 2%, that can give Jon Ossoff the election. So really, these numbers, they're so close. There's not a doubt about that. David Perdue can still win. But I think that right now, these numbers benefit the Democrats, and Republicans should not be confident that they will hold on to these 2 seats, nor should Democrats be confident that they will be able to flip these 2 seats. So basically, we took a look at the betting odds, as well as Trump's approval in each state, and his approval rating in Georgia is not very high. This race right now, I think that Loeffler is currently in a state where she is probably going to lose. I would say that Raphael Warnock has a little bit of a higher chance. If I had to bet, I would bet on Warnock, but I would not bet on these races, because they are still toss-ups. They are still very, very close, but I think that Warnock has the edge over Loeffler, and the other race as of right now is a pure toss-up. I'll be doing a lot more analysis on the early vote, as I did a couple of days ago, very specifically for each and every county. That's going to take a long time to do, but I'll be doing that. It'll probably come out either tomorrow or the day after that, but yeah, I'll make sure to update that. And yeah, I think that'll give us a better picture of who's leading in this election. It just tests the turnout for each county. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you join my Discord server if you have not. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to my channel if you have not. Comment down below who you think is going to win the race at this point in time and why. And so yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Hey guys, we are now just 4 days away from deciding who will control the United States Senate, as those 2 final seats will be decided on the 5th of January, and early voting for the state of Georgia for these runoffs have officially ended, and we can take a look at those numbers in just a moment here. But in addition to that, Jon Ossoff's chances have skyrocketed, overnight, and I mean that literally, because I checked those numbers last night and they were not that high for Jon Ossoff, but his chances have increased significantly since, just a couple of hours ago. He is very, very close to becoming the favorite to win, and you saw that Raphael Warnock yesterday already became the favorite to win the Georgia Senate runoff. So Democrats are now expected to win on the betting odds level, which is really something that I did not expect at all, because although Democrats were doing pretty well in the polls for a very long time, people never actually expected them to win, overwhelmingly, but now they do have a majority in the betting odds, so we'll take a look at all of that in just a few moments here. So before we go into that, make sure you join my Discord server if you have not, the link to which is at the very top of the description below. So basically, right now, what I think is troubling the Republicans the most is those $2,000 stimulus checks and how Mitch McConnell is blocking the vote on it. And, it could, it's not definitely going to pass. It could pass. It does need 60 votes, so whether or not it's going to pass is still in question, but he's not allowing a vote on it. And these people of Georgia, they want the $2,000 stimulus checks, and David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, they both know that the people of Georgia want it, and they have voted against stimulus checks many, many times in the future, but for this situation, right before their re-election, they've announced that they will be in support of those checks if it goes on the Senate floor, and they have agreed with Donald Trump. Trump wants those $2,000 checks. It's just many of the Senate Republicans, including Mitch McConnell, who's blocking this vote and trying to combine with other things the Democrats would never agree to, creating more loopholes in the tax system, I believe. So the people of Georgia, they're going to realize that, they have already realized that, and this is something that Warnock and Ossoff are campaigning over. If they get these 2 Democrats elected, they will get their $2,000 stimulus checks. That's something that Ossoff and Warnock have both said very recently, and that I think is going to drive up the turnout for the Democrats even on election night, because with the Republicans in charge, they're never going to get those $2,000 stimulus checks. If we have Chuck Schumer as the majority leader, he may not be the most favored person ever. He's pretty unpopular, but they would be able to get those checks through, those $2,000 checks that Mitch McConnell has been blocking for the last couple of days. So that is not going to help them. And with David Perdue, who is facing a pretty tough race against Jon Ossoff, much closer than what I much closer than what most people could have expected for the state of Georgia after Joe Biden's win. David Perdue now is basically not going to be able to campaign for the last days leading up to his re-election. So taking a look at the polls, they have stayed the same from yesterday. There's been absolutely no change, and the polls don't really tell us too much, but Warnock's lead might be a little bit better, but really doesn't tell us that much. It's still within the margin of error. So really don't look at the polls. It's pretty much even at this point in time. The race is going to be very, very close. I mean, on the presidential level, it was decided by 0.24%, less than 12,000 votes, I believe. So this race is going to go down to the wire. I would be pretty surprised if Jon Ossoff did, won by over 1%, or if David Perdue won by over 2%. That would surprise me. So taking a look at the betting odds between Raphael Warnock and Kelly Loeffler, of course, yesterday he did take the lead. He now leads with 56 cents per share, 56% chance of winning, according to the betting odds. He increased off yesterday, where he was at 54, now he's at 56 today, and Kelly Loeffler's numbers have plummeted in the last couple of days, and that could be a result of a multitude of reasons, but essentially the point is that now people believe that Raphael Warnock, for the first time since before the election, this is November 3rd, people now believe that Raphael Warnock is going to defeat Kelly Loeffler in the Georgia Senate special election. Now, for the regular election between Ossoff and Perdue, Perdue has always been doing a little bit better in the betting odds compared to Kelly Loeffler. However, as of right now, his numbers are slipping as well. Jon Ossoff is now at 47 cents per share to David Perdue's 56 cents. Very, very soon, Jon Ossoff could definitely overtake the incumbent senator in the betting odds. I mean, these numbers are getting closer and closer. Off that 44 cents from yesterday, Jon Ossoff has already increased by 3 cents today, with David Perdue decreasing by 2 cents. Their margin has decreased by 5 cents in just one day, and this is going to continue to go like this. I really could see Jon Ossoff overtaking David Perdue for the first time since the 30th of October. So, it's just surprising to see that people now believe that Jon Ossoff really might defeat David Perdue, and his chances, I mean, they were at an abysmal 23% at one point, and now he's all the way up at 44, and this comes after David Perdue is not going to be able to campaign for the next couple of days. So this other betting market, this is essentially what will be their net change in the states by party. So this is no change, which is not going to occur because there's no chance of that occurring, and there's no chance that the GOP gains anything because the Senate map, as you can see, Democrats flipped Colorado and Arizona. They lost 1 seat in Alabama, so they have already gained 1 seat. No matter what happens, they will gain 1 seat. The Senate is already 48-50 because Mark Kelly, since it was a special election, he has already been inaugurated, while John Hickenlooper from Colorado has not, and nor has Tommy Tuberville from Alabama. So currently it's 48-50. Before this, it was 47-53. So Democrats are going to gain a seat no matter what happens. So that's why this is not going to occur. So this right here, Democrats +1, this is basically if the Democrats lose both runoff elections, that's at 42. Democrats +2, that's if they win 1 seat, and that, very, very most likely it's going to be Raphael Warnock's seat. So that's pretty much if Warnock wins and Perdue wins, that's going to be 20 cents per share. And if you're betting on both Democrats winning, that is at 2 cents per share. There are only 3 scenarios that are even, possible. So these two, Democrats +1 and Democrats +3, seem to be the two that are the most likely, which is essentially one party wins both races. The least likely seems to be Warnock wins one and Perdue wins the other. So, I mean, I think that the numbers 4 + 3, they are going up quite a bit. I mean, Dems +3, if you take a look at the 90-day graph, it seemed almost impossible at one point. It was at 19 cents per share. Now it's all the way up at 42. So the numbers have increased very, very much for the Democratic Party, and I think that this is very good. I mean, it's right before the election, and I think that, of course, with those stimulus checks, I really think, when you have money involved, and it's $2,000 that people across the country really, really need, I think that is going to definitely hurt the Republican Party by quite a bit. I think that even many moderate Republicans, centrist Republicans, that, probably would have voted for Loeffler or Perdue, and, they need those checks, so they might really just vote for the Democrats just so they can get those stimulus checks, and they will get more in the future, most likely, if Democrats control both the Senate, the House, and the presidency. So, taking a look at the early voting numbers, we looked at this yesterday, and it hasn't changed. It's still at 2.5 million from the 29, so this is a little bit outdated, but what this really shows is that turnout is high. With the exception of the Christmas holiday, turnout has been literally the exact same for the runoff race and the general election. That is just how high the turnout for these two races have been, and I think that's going to benefit the Democratic Party, because typically in runoff races, Republicans turn out a lot more than Democrats, but with this high turnout, it shows that Democrats are turning out for this race. So, you know, we could very well go to the Democratic Party just because of how many voters are coming out, because like I said, this race is not about flipping voters. Jon Ossoff and David Perdue, they do not need to get voters who voted for the opposite candidate to vote for them this time around. They just need voters, more voters, as much as they can, you know, as many voters as they can that voted for them last time to vote for them again. There are many people who are, you know, tired with politics after the general election who, you know, just don't want to vote, but it seems as if a lot of them are voting. You know, we might even see 80% turnout compared to last time. And right now, and Republicans are concerned, but they do definitely have a lot, you know, they do have a very good chance to make up the ground. So, you know, Stacey Abrams has said that he is, you know, she's pretty optimistic about this. She knows that, you know, there's a lot of African American turnout, as you can see, and there have been increases among Latino voters, which is going to benefit the Democratic Party, and that is true. There has been quite a significant increase in terms of the votes from the black population as well as the Latino population in the state of Georgia. It's gone up to 30.8% for the black vote, and previously, according to CNN exit polls, it was 28% in the general election. White 62%, the white vote is now 55.8%. The turnout rate, white has overtaken the black vote, but it is a very, very narrow margin right there, 41.1, the black turnout 39.8, which is still pretty high, one of the highest turnouts in basically the entire chart here. So the black and white turnout, I think that is going to be pretty positive for the Democratic Party. You have almost 1 million black voters voting in this election. I think that is definitely going to be very, very good. And also the Hispanic vote is also pretty high, you know, in relative to how many Hispanics typically vote. The age, you see 66 and up continuing to decrease, which is good for the Democratic Party. Of course, they do still have the highest turnout rate, but for those who did not vote in the 2020 general elections, they're younger voters, a lot of them Democrats, because that's what the Democrats have been doing. They've been getting a lot of voters who did not vote last time to vote for them this time, and a lot of them are young voters, I mean, just turned 18, and they will vote overwhelmingly for the Democratic Party. So I'm not saying the Democrats are going to win. It's really, at this point, it depends on the depends on the turnout that we see on election night. I think that if the turnout is pretty low, and, you know, with 3 million votes already cast, just over 3 million for the early vote, which early voting has already ended, Democrats will win. Unless turnout is very, very high, I don't see Republicans flipping, you know, what the results are right now, which is Democrats. There is no doubt in my mind that the Democrats are winning in terms of the early vote. I mean, we have 38.8% turnout, 3,001,017 votes already cast. That is very, very high, and most of them are from Democratic counties. You see the average turnout is 38.8% statewide. If you go to Fulton County, that is the largest county, a very Democratic county as well, 41.8% turnout, so that's higher, but this is the largest county, so that 41% is much higher than, I mean, I guess 41 from Evans County. And then if you take a look at DeKalb County, you have 45.5% turnout. This district right here, not district, this county right here, DeKalb County, this district voted 81% for the Democratic Party. If you take a look at the numbers right there, 81.2% for Jon Ossoff. And this county has amazing turnout numbers for this race. I mean, 45.5% to 38.8% average. I mean, this is a lot of voters. You know, already 263,000. There's going to be more on election day. So the turnout numbers definitely favor the Democratic Party. If you compare this to the 2020 election, and the turnout for the early vote was 4.013 million, so it's about 1 million higher, and that is really from the deficit that came as a result of the Christmas holiday. You know, turnout came right back up after that, but really Christmas did, you know, decrease the turnout by quite a bit. It was 57.3%, and that 4 million already destroyed the previous turnout record of 3.9 million. So in 2008, 3.9 million people in the state of Georgia voted, and that was a record. In 2020, 4.9 million total. So 4 million, you know, just for the early voting in Georgia before election day voting was pretty significant. So 900,000 people voted on election day in the state of Georgia. I think that my numbers are definitely a little bit lower. I predicted 3.35 million, I believe, so it's going to be higher. I think 3.5 to 3.7 is the most likely. It's not going to be 3.9 million. I very heavily doubt that. But with the turnout 57.3% statewide. If you take a look at these counties that we just took a look at, DeKalb County was 60.8, which is pretty significantly, the margin between those two is pretty significantly smaller than between the DeKalb County numbers right now and the early voting and the average for the state of Georgia as of right now. Fulton County, as you can see, 57.9, just very, very barely higher. So the turnout from these Democratic counties are much better right now compared to what they were for the general election, and I think that is very, very positive for the Democratic Party. Okay, we already took a look at that, but the district numbers by congressional district, what we saw, I went through all this yesterday if you want to watch that. Basically, the Democratic counties, they are 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, and 2. These are the counties that voted Democratic. If you take a look at the House map, you'll see, as you can see, so you have 6, 5, 6, 4, 13, and 7, as well as 2. So if we were to use the turnout here, so basically all those counties near Atlanta right there, and the, not counties, the districts, and then the second district, we have Columbus and Macon. So taking a look at this, 4, 5, 6, 7, 81%, 80%, 75, 74. That is much higher than many, many other counties, especially the 4th and 5th. And these are, two of the largest counties. 5th is the largest, not county, I'm sorry, I keep saying county, but I mean district. The 5th district is 626,000 people registered, so it really is a lot of voters. The second largest district would be the 13th district, followed by the 4th district. So the 13th district, another Democratic district, 78.9% turnout, much higher than these other ones. 75, 73, 74, and you have the 5th district at 80, 81, and the 14th district is at 69.1% turnout. So turnout by congressional district heavily favors the Democratic Party, and I think that's going to help them a lot in this race. So really at this point in time, what I think about these races is I think that both parties can definitely win. Definitely, I'm not ruling out the Republican Party. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, they can definitely win. It's really hard to make a prediction, but I will be making one in the coming days. But really, it's really just about the election day turnout at this point in time, because with these numbers, they're very, very positive for the Democratic Party, these early voting statistics. I will come out with a lot more detail on these early voting numbers tomorrow, just like I did a couple of days ago, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But at this point, it's just about how many people can turn out for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler on election night, and I think that unless turnout is very, very high, Democrats have these two races, but we'll see what happens on the 5th, so make sure you join my Discord server if you have not, to be very, very updated on these two races. Like, comment, and subscribe. Comment down below who you guys think are going to win these races and why, and I am using this larger cursor, so tell me you guys like that, so you guys can see it a little better. I got some comments saying the cursor was too small, so I'm going with this a little bit larger one. So yeah, subscribe to my channel if you have not, and I will see you guys in the next video.